Reviews, gbnews.uk is my email, or you can tweet me at GBNews. I was asking you earlier on, by the way, do you think that it is the Tories that have crashed the economy? Angie is not having any of that. She was my first viewer email in tonight. She saw the tweet that Labour have put up saying the only thing that's crashing any economy around here is the incessant striking. Oh, harsh. What do you think to that? Do you agree with her or not? The reason I'm asking about this today is because the Bank of England have been forced to intervene yet again in economic affairs. They're using the term material risk, and everyone else has gone to town on it. Basically, the bank has started buying up more government debt, they say, to help with stability. Kevin Craig, this is a dream come true for Labour, and they've wasted no time at all. Straight out, I showed one of the tweets earlier on saying, and it's the mantra that seems to be getting trotted out, that the Tories have crashed the economy. Have they really?
Well, Angie won't like this, Michelle, but it wasn't strikers that caused the markets to get spooked with the mini-budget. It wasn't strikers that caused the markets to interest rate rises to rise generally, causing mortgage rates to go up. Now, some folks, including your good self, say, oh, no, the massive increase in mortgage rates, the 40% of mortgages removed from the market, almost 2 million people coming off a 2-year fix, probably going to pay up to 500 quid a month. Some say, no, this has got nothing to do with the government. But actually, when he made the announcement, the Chancellor, of unfunded tax cuts, economists of all persuasions say that that was the trigger for the increase in interest rates. Now, it's absolutely true, which is very reasonable, that more broadly globally we have been behind other nation states in our interest rate rises, something you said recently. But Labour, of course, are going to attack the government because an election is within 2 years, and the good lady on your left there will no doubt pile in a minute.
But is it a true attack, though? Because would you regard our economy as one that's crashed? I wouldn't.
I would regard the last 2 to 3 weeks since Kami-Kwasi made a budget with no reference to the Office of Budget Responsibility to be a deeply unstable time in our economy.
Yeah, but has it crashed? Has our economy crashed?
It's in real dire straits as a direct result of government intervention.
Has it crashed?
Crashed? Well, how do you define a crash?
Well, I would say things like, for example, the unemployment rates came out today. We've had the lowest levels of unemployment as announced today in 50 years. I would say that that's an indication of an economy that hasn't crashed. We're not in a recession. I would say that if we were, that would potentially be an economy that's crashed. We're not in that situation. GDP is better than it was expected to be. So I personally wouldn't say that we're in an economic crash. And I think that what's happening at the moment is that, understandably, Labour are kind of going on this attack after the Tories, but they're doing it in ways that they don't need to.
Well,
because, go on.
Well, just to respond to you, Michelle, I think in a situation where the average mortgage rate increase has gone up for £500 a month as a result of what a politician has done, that will feel to millions of GB viewers and listeners like the economy is crashing. And if it was done by Labour, my word, would we not hear the end of it?
I'll bring Jackie
in
just a sec. But
she's very slick, though.
She's very
wait
good.
For it.
Let me ask you this, though. You say about these interest rate rises happening and you're pinning it all on this mini-budget. Come on now. Interest rates have needed to rise for a period of time. We've not risen in the speed and the gravitas in which other countries have. And what was my other point? I was going to make a really good other point. I've forgotten my other point.
Listen, I actually congratulated you and agreed with you on your broader remark about global interest rates. But come on, everybody.
Oh, my other point, I just remembered. It's popped into my head. Profiteering by banks. Why are they so very, very quick to hike their products' interest rates up on things like mortgages, but so very, very slow to apply the same interest rate rises to things like their savings accounts?
It was working very well before Kami-Kwasi got stuck in.
Kami-Kwasi. Jacqueline, come on, sort it out. Your thoughts?
Well, of course, the economy hasn't crashed. Of course, we've got turmoil across the globe, and particularly in Europe, notwithstanding what's happened with a war in Europe and basically Vladimir Putin holding a lot of Western Europe to ransom. In addition to that, I think a gentle reminder that for more than 2 years, we had lockdowns that cost this economy around £400 billion, which we managed to sustain. and that was without all the additional things that we had to do during COVID. You know, as a businesswoman, many businesses were literally hanging on by their fingernails. A lot of them actually lost their businesses too, and that was in the private sector. But what we were able to do, because of the strength of our economy, we have about 6 million public sector workers in this country, ranging from the police, obviously government departments, NHS and everything. And not one person during the entire time lost their job, which is good, because we wanted to make sure that when we came out of the other end of this, that we had the public sector still intact. But notwithstanding that, it really did affect, obviously, businesses, and very often small businesses, despite furlough. So when Kwasi came forward with his mini-budget, I was delighted. And the reason I was delighted, because things like abolishing IR35, which maybe a lot of viewers really don't know about that much, but it really does affect small businesses. Small and medium businesses are the engine room of this economy. They account for about 82% of the growth that we will get. It's the very big companies, obviously, that we all know about, but we forget about their supply side and their contractors. The fact that we're not going to increase corporation tax, again, you're looking at that's good for business and hopefully more inward investment. The investment zones, the new low tax investment zones, are obviously very welcome. And I have a very close friend who's just in the process, actually, of buying a house, and she's saved probably £3,000 or £4,000 on stamp duty. National insurance. People think national insurance, oh, it's just the employee paying the national insurance. But the fact that we haven't raised it means, you know, it's normally about twice the amount that the employers are paying. So those businesses who are hoping to carry on recruiting are not going to be burdened with additional NI. And so, obviously, the 1p... No, I'm going to carry on.
I haven't interrupted you. I've been very good.
The 1p
Michelle's
increase, the 1p decrease in income tax is also welcome. So I acknowledge timing is everything in politics, and I think we all accept that. But I do not believe that when he made that announcement, when he made the announcement on the mini-budget, which was, obviously, it was discussed in the House of Commons, I actually welcomed it. Now, we can't account for what markets will do, but one point you did raise is when markets wobble, when markets do go, you know, hell for leather, we have speculators. So there will be speculators that have done very well out of all of this. And notwithstanding, we are still, in the G7 countries, the second lowest with, I think, debt. Means that we still have an economy, despite all of these things that have really rocked the boat over these last couple of years, where we can actually go out and borrow when we need to, which we've had to do with the energy crisis. And to be able to borrow, you know, £150 billion, no economy has crashed when it can borrow £150 billion to help with everyone in this country towards their energy bills, which we have little control over, notwithstanding the prices of energy are determined on the world markets.
So I did say that she was very slick, and I didn't try and interrupt. But what I will say is the stamp duty savings have been wiped out by the increase in mortgage costs. Speculators have done well. Many of them, forgive me for pointing this out, are big funders of the Conservative Party. The lockdowns, this is not the topic for today. The topic for today is the incompetence of that announcement that has led to hundreds of pounds on mortgages. And I'll tell you this, and maybe we agree on this. The government is not going to be able to wait for 2 more weeks to tell us what its plans are. Okay. That's going to bring more instability in the markets, and then there needs to be details brought forward much more quickly, because it's fiendishly complicated. But behind the scenes in the markets, there's all sorts of movements going on to protect pension funds who are invested in certain directions. And this idea that the Conservative Party somehow speaks for small businesses, unlike many of the hedge fund Tory party speculators who have made a lot of money from this crisis. I started a business from a living room that's employed hundreds of people and made millions. So we don't need any lessons from those folk. What we do know is that loads of our employees are going to be paying hundreds of pounds more every month, and I'm just saying it didn't need to happen. Do you think Kwasi did a good job?
Well, first of all, you're wrong, because something was going to happen. And what had happened, if we go back a short while, we know the Fed in the US were hiking up interest rates. We know that across Europe, they've been hiking up interest rates. If I've got a criticism of the Bank of England, and I'm very pleased that it is independent, that it was made independent some years ago, is we have sat on interest rates of 0.25 and 0.5 for mortgage purposes. I remember having my mortgage, along with many, many others, during the 80s and the 90s. Mine was about 8%. And it varied. It went to 6% at one stage. There were times when mortgage rates went up to 15%. And people who are older than me and as old as me, they'll remember that. So what I would like to see is the fact that they kept, in my view, this artificially low platform for so long, I think lulled people also into a false sense of security, including maybe building societies and banks. We bailed the banks out not that many years ago, and people will remember who are watching this programme. So, you know, it's about time that the banks also came to the fore, and the building societies. It will be that there will be a number of people, of their customers, who will have increases in their mortgage. And I would like to see the fact that we've helped them out in the past, that they're coming forward to their customers and they're saying, OK, Mr. and Mrs. whoever or Miss whoever, we're going to look and anticipate that your mortgage, and this is what we're going to do to help you. They can look at things like, because we know that the oil prices are likely to drop, we may not need to borrow as much, by the way, over the next 6 months. And what they can do is they could, for example, say, Michelle, we've looked at it. It could be that. We've estimated. Why don't we give you a 6-month holiday in repaying your mortgage? Why don't we look at how you're paying your interest on your mortgage? So I expect them, because they are customer savvy, and there's great competition when you're looking at lending, money lending, whether it's, as I said, mortgages or whatever, to come forward also, look outside the box and see how they can help their customers during this very difficult period.
And go on, Kevin.
I just didn't hear an answer to the question there of whether or not you think the Chancellor is doing a good job and whether he did well with that statement that caused all this.
I think the Chancellor is on the right track.
Okay.
He is on the right track. I am a small state, low-tax Tory. I want the taxes spent properly. I want more money left in people's pockets. That's what I want to see. And then the money that we do give the taxman... I mean, there are people who are on 40% top rate, and they're only middle earners, and by the time you've got national insurance coming on, you're paying nearly 50 to 60% of what you're earning, basically to the government, and then all governments, whatever political colour, they do tend to think it's theirs, and it's not really theirs, it's ours. Yeah, as I said, I acknowledge maybe the timing could have been better, particularly when they were talking about that reduction of top rate. I want to see us come back to 40% top rate as soon as it's feasibly possible. America, the top rate of tax is 37%, and you're only paying 37% if you're earning between $250,000 and $500,000. Ireland is 40% top rate. And when Ireland, the Republic, were reducing their taxes over the years, the EU weren't too happy because they don't like too much competition within the EU states in terms of levels of tax. And they brought in, with low corporation tax, loads of investment. So the whole thing is, if you can bring in the investment, if you can start the growth going, because we have been sitting on this plateau, then that's what we need to do. It's not going to be easy, and I don't think the public out there think it is easy, but I think they do understand the huge issues that we have gone through, the turbulent times that we have gone through as a nation over the last couple of years, and I am very happy with the path that Kwasi Kwarteng is taking and that the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, wants to move along. Okay. We've got to kickstart this economy, and we can't keep sitting in our laurels thinking something's going to happen, because it's not.
I commend your loyalty, right? But just as a reality check, if a Labour Chancellor had done and a Labour Prime Minister what these two had done a few weeks ago, you two this evening would be absolutely hammering them. But you are very articulate. That's why you're such a successful person. But you know, I think a lot of people will not think after 12 years they understand. They'll say, this lot have had long enough and they've run out of ideas and we don't trust their judgment.
Just my concluding point. A Labour Chancellor wouldn't have done this. They wouldn't have done this. And don't forget, It was
a Labour
40p.
Chancellor, that's it. A Labour Chancellor would not have decreased taxes for the wealthiest. Disaster.
They wouldn't have been reducing tax and
bankers'
corporation
bonuses while people are on the breadline. Can't take that.
Corporation tax. And don't forget, when Labour came in 1997, for the next 12 years, they kept the top rate of income tax to 40p. The lower your top rate of taxes, the more revenue you will get into the Treasury and the more you can invest on other things. It's not the right time at the moment. They'll look at that again in the future, and I hope when it's feasible, we will bring that top rate down and we will try and make sure that the public are going to keep more of the money that they earn.
A couple of my viewers are pointing out, saying, how come no one's pointing out to the Labour guy, that means you, that it was Labour that pretty much bankrupts the country?
Well,
oh, yeah.
Let's go. If I tell you what Labour did, Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling, and if anyone's got the time, I'll talk about this for weeks about the financial crisis of 8.
Don't do it for weeks, but do it for about 30 seconds.
I'll do it for as long as Jackie had. But basically,
he had COVID in Ukraine. He had
basically, yes, and no one denies COVID Ukraine. But that was a very different crisis. We are talking about the fact that hundreds, if thousands, possibly millions of listeners and viewers are paying larger mortgages as a direct result of the actions of politicians. And I'm merely seeking to hold... Yes, well, in my opinion, and you've had a lot of airtime tonight, in my opinion, that's what happened. And not just me, neutral economists from across our country. You are remarkably generous to Kwasi Kwarteng, much more so than I hear than many others in the Houses of Parliament.
Well, there you go. Who's this? Someone here is saying, what's your name? Carl, you say, I'm a mortgage broker and a financial advisor, and interest rates are high and currency down all over the UK. He's saying markets dropped because the US increased their interest rates on the 21st, which made the dollar stronger on the 22nd. That's why the pound dropped on the 23rd, along with the yen and the euro. That is why he says the rates have gone up. And he makes a very key point at the end here, Carl. You know your onions, you do. He's saying the Bank of England were too slow to have initially raised interest rates. I agree with you, as does Jackie.
I don't.
He's saying Labour is trying to scare people into a downturn.
No, I mean, look, it's not... Labour under Keir Starmer does not want to scare people in our country. Okay?
What?
It doesn't. Labour is just pointing out and holding a 12-year-old government to account. That's all. And my opinion, in differing to Carl and you two, is that unfunded tax cuts announced by the Chancellor with no reference to the OBR caused absolute turmoil in our markets and that ordinary people are paying.
Labour politicians have been practically hysterical, along with some of the mainstream media, BBC, Sky. I mean, I don't know how they sleep at night. They're spending the entire time ratcheting up the hysteria on this. So, they're talking about, oh, look at the reaction from the market and all of this. My goodness. I mean, it's just been absolutely unbelievable.
Briefly, Malcolm, he's emailed in. He's blaming this on the IMF's intervention. He's saying it was the IMF interfering, which spooked a lot of the market. Do you think the IMF was right to come in as and when they did?
The IMF, there was no reason at all for the IMF to come in. We were not borrowing money from the International Monetary Fund, which was set up post-war to help sort of third world countries and whatever. The trouble is the IMF's turned into a little bit political body, and then it put forward this statement and it starts talking about inequality in the UK. This is the International Monetary Fund, which is now the president, is an ex-commissioner from the European Union. And I was just astounded. Absolutely astounded.
Why?
There are countries in this world that don't even have a democracy, never mind equality. And there they are commenting on... I mean, I just thought it was unbelievable. I think the thing is, Labour know about the IMF because in the 70s they had to go to the IMF to be bailed out. The IMF made a statement, but we're not going to the IMF because we don't need bailing out by the IMF.
Not
so
yet.
I think we'll just leave...
Give it a couple of weeks.
Well, we won't.
Wait
we'll leave
for this
the IMF
gap.
over here because I could probably go on about that for a bit longer.
I thought you were saying Labour weren't frightening people with the doom and gloom. Now you're saying that we're going to need some kind of bailout from the IMF.
Michelle, I'm pointing out that many economic commentators, for example, the head of one of the Cambridge colleges, is saying today there is a 2-week period now, we've got massive uncertainty in a vacuum where we don't know what the government's going to come out with.
Well, do you know what? Here's a little suggestion for everybody, and I know it's a very simple one, but, simple ideas are often the best. If we've got a couple of weeks to fill, why don't we just relax and wait and see what happens?
Right.
Rather than spending every waking minute of every waking day pontificating and projecting doom and gloom, just wait and see, everybody.
Shall I tell you why that's not possible for lots of people, Michelle?
Tell me very quickly then.
All right, a few words. It's because people who are already on the edge economically are now paying hundreds of extra pounds a month as a result of government cock-ups.
What is the normal mortgage rate at the moment, interest rate then? Average interest rate then? You're talking about new mortgages? New mortgages, or somebody who's come to the end.
5.5.
Yeah, because
94%
are fixed rate, and they're normally fixed rate for a couple of years.
1.8 million people
but there will be a proportion will be coming to the end of the fixed rate.
2 million people.
So I was under the impression that you could still get, because obviously I'd made some inquiries, and they were running at 3 to 4%,
Absolutely
depending
not.
who your lender was. But as I said, these companies that lend money also need to look how they look after their customers.
Right, well, tell me at home, because you'll be the customers. Are you trying to get a mortgage at the moment? What rates are you getting? And whose view do you share? Helen says, by the way, what crashed economy everywhere I go? It's packed. Pubs, restaurants, bars, hotels, you name it. She says there's money everywhere. Do you feel that, though? Tell me. GBViews, gbnews.uk is the email.